Mr. Assistant President, I rise to speak on the International Day to Combat Islamophobia, which was held on Saturday the 15th of March. Assistant President, discrimination and prejudice against people of Islamic faith or background is always a deep and pressing problem, but this year it has taken on even more urgency. Because this year we are forced to consider the scourge of Islamophobia in the context of a broader global rise in intolerance, bigotry and hatred that is affecting people of all faiths. Conflicts driven by personalities or egos, fueled by ancient animosities, have led to unspeakable atrocities across the Middle East, in Europe and in Africa. It is unsurprising that these conflicts have caused grief, anger and despair for diasporic communities across the world, including here in Australia. In this atmosphere, Australia's much vaunted, multicultural, plural society is being routinely challenged. Our hard-won social cohesion, our tender embrace of difference has been put to the test. In my first speech to this place, I spoke of the period in the early 2000s when people of Middle Eastern background felt directly threatened in this country. The shameful period that culminated in the Cronulla riots. I spoke about the calculated exploitation of refugees during the Tampa affair, where people were used as political fodder in a legitimate domestic policy debate. The whispering campaign that vulnerable men, women and children could be terrorists appealed to the very worst in human nature. As I've said before, these events saw race emerge as a brace for divisive and menacing rhetoric that would pass as political debate. The parallels with today are clear, but this time the targets are not just people from Islamic nations. I find it deeply troubling that some people feel so unrestrained from engaging in religious and ethnic bigotry in all its forms. Mr. Assistant President, Australia's social fabric isn't sun-bleached beach towel. It's a rich, multicoloured tapestry woven from the experiences of people from every corner of the globe and from ancient peoples who have been here for thousands of years. But that tapestry is as vulnerable as it is valuable, because once it's deemed to be permissible to target one section of the community with vitriol and violence, then inevitably it will also be considered permissible to behave in that same way towards other parts of the community. And at the risk of labouring the metaphor, once you start pulling at one thread of the tapestry, others follow and the whole thing starts to unravel. Back in the early 2000s, when I felt personally exposed and vulnerable because of the colour of my skin and the shape of my nose, I just wanted to know that someone had my back and that I was valued as a citizen in my own country. Assistant President, as we mark the International Day to Combat Islamophobia, I implore all members to never lose sight of the impact that their words and actions have on others, to never forget the power of their example, because our social cohesion doesn't just endure by accident or good luck. It requires resolve and vigilance. It requires a steadfast commitment to empathy, to put yourself in other people's shoes, and most importantly, it requires leadership from people in positions of authority.